It was good, J Boogie in full effect mode. Bun down is the sound. You know how we do. This is, of course, the Lounge Presents. We're live streaming on Twitch, and this episode will be available on all the podcast platforms. You know how to find them. And today in the Lounge Space, we are we are blessed, to say the least, to welcome a gentleman who easily can be put in the pantheon of builders in hip hop culture. He's definitely got a reputation. He's earned this reputation. And for the first time in the lounge space today, we welcome none other than DJ Platurn.
Thank you for having me, Jay. I appreciate that. I appreciate the gassed up kind words of acknowledgement right there, my friend. Thank you.
No, for real, it's a pleasure to have you in, man. For the exact things that I mentioned, there are there are a gang of DJs out there. We know that there are a gang of DJs, but there are a certain level of DJs that we have looked to as I've said, as builders. Builders of community, builders of infrastructure, and builders of roads that DJs that follow them are able to walk down. And you, man, definitely one of those. For real.
Uh,
Salute.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that acknowledgement for sure. I don't know if I would put myself on that high of a pedestal, but that's
I
very kind of you, and I will I will definitely not shoot down the efforts of keeping certain aspects of this culture alive for the better better most of my DJ career. That's definitely been a big part of the aim and the efforts that go into the DJ side and the music side of things. So thank you, man. I appreciate that. That's very
Oh, no doubt.
so,
No doubt.
yeah,
Now we always start off every episode by asking how you were first introduced to hip hop culture.
sure. Um, I suppose the earliest memory that I can remember. So I'm originally from Iceland. It's not a lesser known fact, but not super well known. Um, and I moved to the States. I moved to California when I was really young, when I was 7 years old.
Okay, okay.
And hip hop history in Iceland is kind of fascinating. It's not like it was a big thing. Obviously, this very secluded little island in the North Atlantic and small population in the whole nine. But like a lot of other places around the planet, and through music, radio, and a little bit of television, the first initial aspects of hip hop culture that made its way to Reykjavik, mainly the capital in Iceland, was breaking, was b-boy.
Hey. Woo!
So, yeah, and so even before the music and everything, what people really understood to be the music, I don't think the music like really hit until probably like the late 80s, early 90s, when cats started really taking part in the music side of things as far as like the culture as a whole. So it was mostly the dance side of it all, and cats were literally, obviously not the exact same, but you would see dudes in tracksuits and cardboard and
Yeah.
boom boxes and everything, dude. Like they would be out there really actually going at it and making it work and copying everything that they saw in Beat Street and Flashdance and the whole nine. So those were my initial earliest influences, was the dance side of it all. And then when I moved to the US, which was in '83, that's when I got more and more exposed to the music side
Yep.
of it all. And that's just being around it, being in the Bay, being in an American
Oh
city,
yeah.
a metropolitan area.
Yeah.
It's inevitable you're going to get exposed to certain things.
Yeah.
um, and uh, and just being in the general, sorry, I don't know why I'm
It's
getting
all good.
right now. But yeah, and so you just start being a kid and being into the music and the culture. You start surrounding yourself more and more with everything that's going on. And I remember buying my first tapes when I was 7-8 years old with my
Yep.
allowance, and another core like early memory when I was a kid was just taking road trips like with my family, and the gas stations would always have, you know, one extra batteries for the Walkman, and then they
Yeah.
they would have tapes, you know,
Yeah.
cassette tapes were
Yep.
everywhere. They were at 7-Elevens and,
Yep.
you know, gas stations and the whole nine. And so you could buy, you know,
That's real.
yeah, so you could buy like, you know, you could buy like Def Jam tapes and everything. Like
Yeah.
Def Jam was the biggest label
Yeah.
probably at the time, at least with the most money and the biggest distribution, because they had Run DMC and Beastie Boys and all that, right? So those tapes were everywhere. And I remember the Def Jam and the Profile, like best of tapes, the compilations would be all over the place. And so that's how it kind of expanded into a little bit more than just the Run DMCs
Right.
and just the kind of standard bigger, you know, the LL Cool J's and everything of the time. And you start getting exposed to more, you know, like the Spider D's and the Pumpkin and all, you know, and all of that kind of, you know, those projects, those very early like Pumpkin projects that he was,
Yeah.
you know. So anyway, that was the first. Those are the kind of first really tangible, yeah, like core early memories.
Okay.
Being a kid, like super intrigued and just soaking it all in. You know what I mean? Like that was very early on. I remember just being into it. 7 years old, you know, this kid
Yep.
from you know the fucking boonies of Iceland. So I'm sorry. I'm assuming we can curse on here.
You can totally curse. So let me just pause for a second.
Yeah.
You were exposed to breaking back home first. Did you actually start to throw down a little bit, get some tops in, little 6-step action?
So I never really got into classic b-boying, but I started dancing really early on. Like junior high is probably when I started, like 80 yeah, like 88 is when I really started like actually getting into, I guess, you know, taking it seriously and like learning moves and all of that. But during that era, and this is, I went to junior high and high school in Southern California. But during that era, what I got into more than anything was house dancing, which is
Okay.
we call it house dancing.
Sick.
It was basically like, you know, it was there were you would incorporate certain styles of house dance, but it was also the stuff that kids were into at the time that really embraced more, I guess, like the up tempo, like New Jack Swing and R&B stuff, right? And then that's where all of those dances all came from. You know, you talk about things like the Running Man and, you know, all of that kind of,
Yeah.
The Running Man is probably, you know, the I guess probably the one that's lasted the longest,
the most ubiquitous. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You got kids nowadays that are doing their own version of the Running Man, and
yeah,
you got dudes like me that are like, that's not the Running Man, you know, all of that. But that's where a lot of that initially, for me. And then I was in crews and we would battle and the whole nine, you know, like it was all the elements of b-boy, but it was less on the like the actual like traditional breakdancing side of things. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, man, I rock the shiny the metal tipped, you know, shiny shoes and the
hell yeah
socks and the fucking hammer pants and
yep.
man, I had a flat top and everything, dude. It was yeah.
I see. I'm trying to picture you in one now.
Dude,
how high was it?
The pictures are laughable, bro. Like they are definitely, yes. They are very, yes. It's undeniable. They're totally ridiculous. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about folks when they discover hip hop culture is a lot of people have discovered the culture and have rolled with the culture since the inception of it in their lives, but not everyone makes a decision to say, okay, well, not only do I love this culture, I'm going to start participating in this culture, and y'all going to see me on a stage. What was it about the culture for you that drew you in?
I think, you know, when you're as young as I was, when you get into hip hop, and the multiple elements versus just being a fan of the music and whatnot, there's a big part of the excitement of it all that is just camaraderie, right? Getting together
Yeah.
with people that are like-minded, and you have your same age group and are into the same kind of things. They're into the style of dress, they're into
Yeah.
the kind of music, trading music, swapping tapes, right? Trying to write your own rhymes and whatever, doodle on the paper in class and the whole nine, trying to get into it. Never really got into graph, but I learned some hand style, all of that. So um, I think it was more a camaraderie thing than anything. Like, I moved around a lot when I was a kid,
Hmm.
so for me to have an avenue to connect with like-minded, same age, homies in my area, when I was first getting into it, was big for me, because I was constantly uprooted. I think I lived in almost like 10 different places or something through high school.
Okay.
Yeah, we kept moving around because of my dad's job and schooling and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
so it was a big thing for me to kind of, I guess, have like an automatic avenue
Yeah.
to link up with like-minded kids that were into the same kind of counterculture shit that I was into. And I was into, like, I wouldn't say like a super specific aspect of the culture, but this was golden era shit. This is late
Hell
80s
yeah.
to mid 90s. And where I was in Southern California, and the crews that I rolled with, our whole thing was very much about uh just like, there was the other side of being a part of the culture where there was a lot of pride, and there was a lot of, like, anti-racist sentiment, especially where I was, because I lived in the valley outside of LA, and there was a lot of educating yourself on the past. There was like a militant aspect to it. We were all listening to Paris and Brand Nubian, and Ice
Hey.
Cube when he was
Woo.
angry as fuck. You know what I mean? Like, and all of that kind of stuff. So that was really what we latched onto more than anything. So it was I guess it was anti-authoritarian at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we were really about showing that, and dude, like, the riots happened when I was in high school. I was not far from,
Mm.
all of that stuff was happening all around us.
Yeah.
The Rodney King beating and all of that kind of,
Yes.
that was a big
Jeez.
part of the whole experience for us. And so we really latched on to these frames of mind,
Yep.
um, surrounding the music that were really important to us, along with just being fans of the beats and the dance and
Right.
the style of clothing and all of that. So it was a mentality, that went along with it, like a belief system in terms of how you rolled,
Yes.
and not just the culture and what it was kind of on the surface for a lot of people. So
I feel you.
yeah.
Feel you all the way. So is it a safe to say that all the homies you were coming up with all were getting into the culture pretty much the same way you were?
Yeah, I mean, most of the cats that I rolled with, we either all played basketball together or we all danced together.
Hey, there you go.
That's what it was, dude. Like, we
There you
were,
go.
yeah, dance crews, and we would go to house parties, and we would hang at school, just kind
Yeah.
of under that element. And so much of it, if not damn near all of it, especially just like in school and or during high school, especially, man, like, it was all about the music. Like, we were always listening to music together. We were
Yeah.
always educating each other on music, sharing music, sharing tapes, like, all of that kind of
Yeah.
thing. It was yeah, it was really, really, like, heavily centered around sharing and educating one another, I think, about different things. And most of it was just music, like learning about newer music, learning about lesser known music, learning about samples, from, like getting a little bit more into funk and
Mm-hmm.
jazz and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So educating yourself on the process of how the music was made, and then getting into East Coast stuff along with everything that was happening in LA at the time, and on the West Coast and all that. So yeah, yeah.
Yo, it is so apropos that you bring up tape trading, because for us up here in Winnipeg, tape trading was real. Okay, it was getting the cassettes from the cousins who live in California,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of Filipinos in California,
yeah,
and they're related to all of us up here in Winnipeg.
yeah, yeah. There you go. Exactly. That West Coast
So
Filipino connection, man,
we
super
were
real.
getting so much from y'all. We were getting
Yeah.
so much, and we are kind of hoarding it too.
Not it, dude. Not it. You couldn't always buy, blanks or
Yo,
whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like it was. I mean, so much of it, dude. Like you're just, you're broke kids, dude. Like,
yeah,
you're either gonna eat lunch that day or buy a fucking TDK or something, dude. But
exactly. If
you
you
know,
buy that, if you buy that 5 pack of TDK or Maxell, if you can afford it,
yeah,
right? Because you always
yeah,
try to go for TDK or Maxell.
yeah,
If you have the ducats, you're gonna grab the 5 pack and try to ride that as long as you can.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, man, I feel you. I feel you. So coming from, like, obviously coming from an immigrant household, when the day came, when it became very obvious that not only were you very serious about the culture, but you were very serious about being a performer in the culture. How did the family react to their son being a part of this very counterculture
Yeah.
movement that they may not be totally fully grasping?
No, no, no. They definitely didn't understand anything
Yeah.
for a very long time. Um, they especially didn't like. They didn't agree with like the anger side of it all. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Because we were like, dude, like, it's just like it's like Public Enemy every day, dude. It's
yeah.
that kind of thing. And when you're listening to when you're listening to Paris like rap about Bushkilla and like all the lyrics and you're like that's a very hard thing for adults and parents to grasp onto
Oh yeah.
that you're you know that your white boy son from Iceland is into this like really really hardcore
Right.
rap music and whatnot.
Right.
But I don't think they were necessarily opposed to me like when I really started to get into DJing and making music. I don't think they were necessarily opposed to the creative side of it. They just never really understood it,
Yeah.
and it wasn't something that they didn't consider the fact that I was taking this seriously. They didn't
Yeah.
know that I
Yeah.
actually had aspirations to turn it into a life to
Yeah.
some degree. It was always like you're going to college and you're going to figure out some sort of career path and blah blah blah, and then that just never happened. It all just ended up becoming music eventually. Um, but they eventually learned, and I think they understood uh, sometime down the line that the aspects that I was equally drawn to with hip hop music was educating myself. Was actually getting smarter
Right.
off of learning more and diving into different cultures and different histories and the whole nine and how beneficial that can actually be when you start taking that aspect of the music seriously. Like I talk
Right.
about that a lot, especially when you get into making hip hop music and when you start diving into the older music and the older labels and artists and music from around the world and from uh, different just areas of the U.S. and learning about all of those cultures and their histories, it expands your mind more and more and more and more. The more that you want to learn, the more that you dive into it, the more your universe gets bigger. And that kind of thing is, at least from the family that I came from, is it was that eventually became a very positive thing. Like
Okay.
like not obviously not all families, not all parents. Like some parents and communities want to keep the people that are part of their community insular. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
don't want to necessarily see them expand their minds and realize that there's a bigger world out there.
Yeah.
But for me, that was a very welcome thing in my household to know that you're just learning about the world, the bigger world as a whole,
Oh yeah.
and doing that through hip hop music and hip hop culture was, I think, probably a pretty eye opening. for my
Yeah.
parents eventually to see that, and I wouldn't say that they agreed with, again, the path that I took as far as work goes, but that aspect of it, they eventually were really into, and they liked that, they liked that it expanded my viewpoint of the world as a whole, just being into that music and the culture. So
That moment of understanding, I guess you could say,
mhm.
when they're able to look at you and say, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
It's a great moment.
it is. It
It's a
is.
great moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, man. I think them understanding that it wasn't just like angry shit and
Exactly.
and just that, you know what I mean? It wasn't just
Exactly.
like, Easy and NWA and Ice Cube. It was also De La Soul
Yes.
and Tribe and all of these other artists from, and like, and then they start hearing, and I'm starting to play them music that I learned about, from like the samples and everything like that, and they're like, oh shit, dude, like you actually know, about a lot of stuff that we didn't know anything about, and
Right.
all of that. So, because my dad was a DJ back in the day, he had a whole record collection, and
Okay. There you go.
yeah, and so there was a lot of music that he eventually ended up being exposed to in the same way that I was. So
There you go.
yeah,
And I like that you brought up the fact that later on they're able to see how much music you actually know when you're bumping, things that they're familiar with. Like, oh, you bump this,
yeah,
really?
yeah,
And the look on their face, like, oh, okay.
yeah,
And you walk away kind of like, that's right. I'm so glad you brought that up, man. That's uh, there's a lot of commonalities when it comes to people in the culture, the way we discover it, the way it impacts our lives, the way the people around us react to how what we're doing and how we're doing it.
yeah,
There's a lot of commonalities, man. And you know what? One of the reasons why I ask certain questions on the podcast is to show, dog, there are way more commonalities between us than there are differences,
yeah, 100%.
regardless of how you look at certain things, like politically or what have you. But you don't understand. The connections are so much deeper than that.
Yeah,
We have so many commonalities coming up that it's like, come on, you know?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I agree. I agree, and especially if you're into art, like
exactly.
if you're actually into if you're into the idea of having an artistic filled life to some
Yes.
degree, music, movies,
Yep.
visual art, whatever, if you're into it, um you're just, dude, you're about soaking up creativity,
Exactly.
and it's one thing, I think, to there are these, like people love to say that art and politics, for instance, aren't supposed to mix, which is total bullshit,
That
obviously.
makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense at all, right? But it is this interesting thing that where you can. I think it's like you said, man. You can find more common ground and maybe even easier and more palatable ways to
Yes.
discuss certain things.
Yes.
You're looking at it from like an inspired artistic standpoint. You know what
Thank
I'm
you.
saying? Like,
Exactly.
yeah. So anyway, yeah. No, I'm right there with you, man. I
There
agree.
you go.
Yeah.
Well, you obviously grew up around music. What was being played around the house? Like, dad was a DJ, obviously, but what
Yes.
was being bumped in the crib on the regular?
So my dad was primarily into classic rock and classical music, but
Okay.
it didn't stop there. He was also, like, he was on the radio in Iceland back in the day,
Okay.
and a lot of the records that were in our household growing up were records that he actually played on air when he was
Okay.
younger, and so that made for a much more vast experience as far as what was available to me. So like we had, and this was not common for Icelandic households at all when I was younger, but we had soul music and we had reggae music and we had like
Nice.
funky jazz music. Like
Yeah.
you could have I listened to Stevie Wonder and Donald Byrd and Otis Redding and
Hey.
all of these groups when I was younger in Iceland.
There you
And
go.
that was not, like I said, it wasn't common, but it was also like it was. I guess you couple like certain sound beds of music from certain eras with the environment
Yep.
that you were in, and soul music didn't necessarily translate all that well to like a harsh, cold, dark winter
Right.
Icelandic
Yep.
experience.
Yeah.
That's my meaning. So I'm like, I think I was really just like drawn to the fact that this music felt so much different than the world that I actually lived in physically.
Right. Right.
Like it was so much more warmer and I guess more like positive. It wasn't like, dark, sad, like rock music, or whatever
Right.
the fuck. I mean, not that all rock music is like that, but like classic rock from the 60s and 70s, or the 70s at least. Um, it just had a different kind of energy to it that I wasn't necessarily drawn to. And so I
I
was
feel you.
drawn more to the other records in my dad's collection. More like the interesting jazz stuff and the soul records that he had. The soul records are like Stevie Wonder was everything to me when I was growing up. Like,
Mm.
I probably listened to Stevie more than anything when
There
I
you
was
go.
so
There you go.
yeah.
So answer me this. With the music that you heard growing up and with the music that you were exposed to as you were coming up,
Yeah.
how did all of that influence inform this wonderful project you put together called Through Storm and Grief?
Yes. Well, that's a loaded question.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I think probably uh, there's I guess the shortest and most kind of direct answer into the lane that we're going down here is that at this stage in my music career and my DJ career, I and a lot of it honestly has to do with kind of what we all went through COVID because
Mm.
like I've been making music and making beats since the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been I've dabbled in so many different aspects of music production and making hip hop music, sample based music,
Yep.
and I think there was just kind of a shift in my thought process in kind of what I took more seriously than anything else in terms of my
Mm.
approach. Um, and that just ventured to more of like the moody, like atmospheric stuff, you know what I mean? And so I started making a bunch of stuff during COVID. And I made one record in particular that was just really on more of like the like sultry kind of more down tempo tip, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
the atmospheric. I know these
Yep.
are all kind of cliche terms and whatnot, and of course like trip hop and down tempo or whatever term you like to use.
Yeah. All the fun subgenre names
Yeah,
we
I
came up
know, and
with.
they're so dumb at this stage.
Right?
Like, I
Right?
mean, they really like when all of that stuff was initially coming out, bro. Like, it was just hip hop still, dude. Like,
Right?
these were just beats. It was just instrumental hip hop. It
Thank
wasn't. It
you.
wasn't like
Come on.
it wasn't a term. Like nobody was trying to come up with a term to separate
Mm-mm.
it from what we were already into, because so
Exactly.
much of yeah, like we were talking about Mowax and Ninja Tune and all this stuff earlier,
Yep.
right? So like
Yep. Yep.
most of that stuff, when you couple it alongside what was considered kind of, I guess, more interesting sound beds of the mid 90s, and even if you go into the more kind of like serene and melodramatic sound beds that like Q-Tip was using or Prince Paul was using or whatever,
Yeah.
for some of those Dayline Tribe records,
Yeah.
like the stuff that was being made on the other end, by these artists that were thrown under the trip hop moniker and whatnot, dude. None of it was really. It wasn't different in that kind of way,
No.
like it didn't turn into this like, oh, we're different over here, we're whatever, better or smarter or more
Nope.
intellectual about our approach to music making. Dude, it was the same shit, man. Like,
Basically.
it was fat, it was fat funky drums,
Yeah.
and warm bass lines,
Yes.
and like fucking pretty riffs on top of it, dude. And like
Yep.
all of that, 80% of the music, like both independent hip hop and even stuff like, what the beat miners and all of these guys were making back then. It was the same thing, man. It was
Oh
the
yeah.
same kind of like ethos in terms of your approach.
Definitely.
And so anyway, like that never changed for me. It never changed for me, dude. Like that ended up being just the thing that I cared about, I think, the most. I like, that's the music for me that I think still remains the most timeless from that era.
Say word.
Is just that kind of particular sound bed.
Mhm.
And I just became more and more drawn to making music like that over the years.
There
You
you
know,
go.
and I've done everything, man. I did everything from the DJ mixes to the DJ edits to the
Yep.
remixes to all the
Yep.
club stuff and all of that. But then this project, and the last main one that I released during COVID was, it was just more about hitting some notes, man. It
I
was
hear
more
that.
about hitting some notes that really resonated with me more than anything. Like it was, like emotional music. I think
Mhm.
maybe is more than, like, my dad used to say this thing all the time when I was growing up. He would say, and I'm gonna have to paraphrase this. I'm not gonna
Paraphrase
remember
that. Yeah.
exactly what the phrase was, but it was essentially, the premise of it was, the music that lasts the longest, that has the most impact on, like the human psyche and the human soul, is melody driven music, right? That's like the stuff that really
Yeah.
sticks with us and resonates with us and
Yep.
stays in our minds. And that's why you have things in these compositions like classical music, for instance, that's been around for 400 or 500 years. These
Oh
are
yeah.
everlasting melodies, right? And then
Oh yeah.
you think about everything from, whatever. Do you think about all the songs from Michael Jackson's Off the
Oh
Wall,
yeah.
all the way
Easily.
down to they reminisce over you, right? Like, these are tracks that are more than likely going to last for a really, really, really long time. Like,
Oh
these
yeah.
things just stay in, like, the pantheon of popular culture. That's why you have, like, still to this day, that's like, Black Sheep's The Choice Is Yours. Like, you've heard that in 50 different commercials over
Yeah.
the last 30 years. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because it's just, it's this undeniable catchy aspect. And that's what I was always just drawn to in terms of making, like, pretty melodic music. But the drums still got to hit. So
Definitely.
the drums and the
Definitely.
bass line still got to hit the way that I always loved. So yeah.
Well, I want to take this moment to give you your props, dog,
Thank you,
because
bro.
I mentioned to you before we went live, before I put it on, I was honestly asking myself, I'm not quite sure what to expect from this record. This should be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And as soon as I hit play, I was like, yeah, boy, there
Yeah.
you go. For the
Appreciate it.
reasons that I mentioned to you
Yeah.
before we went live, you were recalling some Nightmares on Wax, you were recalling some Ninja tunes, some Portishead, like, and that was like serious vibes.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. No, I appreciate it. And again, like I said, man, that like, dude, there's still all these hip hop elements, man, that still just
Oh yeah.
resonate so heavily throughout a lot of this stuff, and that's never gonna go away for
Mm-mm.
me, because
Mm-mm.
the samples got to be dope. The drums have to have some funky pocket to them. The bass lines have to they got to be warm, and they got to hit, and they got to be sultry. And it's got to evoke a little bit of that emotion, man. And so that's why with this particular record, it's all instrumental. And there's some sample bits and whatnot, some
Yeah.
vocal sample bits and whatnot, but it's all instrumental. And there's some playing on there. I got some really, really dope artists that collaborated with me on some tracks.
Yes.
That are cool.
There's one in particular.
Yes, sir.
I saw a name.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew you weren't playing.
What's that?
When I saw the name Jay Mumford,
Yeah.
okay, come on.
Amen.
That's when I knew you weren't playing.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
That's when I knew you weren't playing.
Of course, absolutely.
For anyone who's not familiar,
that dude, man. Jay is that dude, man. He is
oh,
that
yeah.
guy is a monster, dude. I've known Jay for a minute, and we knew each other, on mostly the DJ tip, not even like the beat making or the MC tip, because obviously, he came from that world before.
J-Zone, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Before he went towards the drumming thing, and
Yep.
it makes such like perfect, absolutely perfect sense that he, one, took it as seriously as he has, and two, how absolutely ridiculously dope he is at it. Right?
Yes.
Like he is, dude. Like his pocket is bonkers.
Whew.
His pocket is bonkers, dude. Like he takes the art of it all so seriously, man. He's such a student, and he did, everything from the recording techniques and the kinds of snares that he's buying, and how, everything's mic'd up, and how he gets those sounds that we all love. You know what I mean? Like these breaks that, and the sound of these breaks, the drum breaks, that we were so into with this hip hop shit, man. Like he just absolutely nailed it, dude. So the track I did with him, he did it. The track I had him play on is a slow burner. Like it's slow. So he's nailing that super slow, like really really deep in the groove pocket on that track that he played on, and it just came out ridiculous, man. It came out ridiculous. So.
And yo, for real, it shows how serious you were gonna be with this record.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta
Like, you
do
know what I'm saying?
do something. I had to come with something, so
You
Um,
also had Martin Parra from Mantabalas.
yes,
Say what?
yeah,
See,
Martin.
that's why I didn't know what to expect from this record. I'm like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
with the folks he's got on there, what is this record gonna sound like?
yeah. And that the track that he's on is real moody. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
very
Woo,
mellow.
salute.
Yeah, and a
Jeez.
beautiful track. Like he did an amazing job on that. Everybody that contributed to the record did an absolutely phenomenal job. Like these, everything from the cats that are a little more known to the lesser known dudes, man. Like they all came with it. They all did incredible work on these joints, and I couldn't be more happy with the end result. And it
Well,
is
then,
varied. It obviously, like, it hits some
yes.
notes, and then there's just some raw, hardcore breakbeat type shit. Something a little bit more, just for the I guess, like, more straightforward breaks in, like, hip hop side of things and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, no, I appreciate it, dude. Yeah, for sure. Both Martine and Jay absolutely murdered the songs they were on. So.
And if you're gonna big up the people who contribute to this record, then you definitely got to big up yourself because you were the Quincy on this Thriller. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
So big yourself up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. I had an idea with this thing. I actually initially had an idea to make the record a little bit longer and to turn it into both a vocal and instrumental project, because I worked on a handful of tracks that are all going to come out later on a separate thing.
There you go.
Yeah, that were initially part of this approach.
Okay.
But I ended up, and there were some really dope MCs, man. Like I worked with a handful of some MCs and singers that I was really excited about, and the end results are great. They just didn't really make sense for this
the record.
particular project.
Oh,
like
I get it. I get it.
It kind of ended up that those songs, because there's been plenty of projects that came out throughout the years that are in the vein of like sample based music and all of that had both instrumental and vocal tracks together. But
yeah,
for some reason, this just ended up being a little bit more appropriate as just like a fully instrumental affair. So,
well, yeah. I hope this music you're referencing now is going to see the light of day.
It will for sure.
There you go.
Yeah, no, some fire, dude. Some pretty serious joints. Some very like lyrical cats, man, that are on the vocal tracks, and I'm not sure if it's gonna make. It's probably not gonna make it out till sometime next year, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, we'll link up and we'll wrap on it.
I was gonna say, you'll have to come back for that.
For sure. Definitely, when those things start getting into more of a complete status and whatnot, I'll be sure to share some with you, man, for sure.
Oh, perfect. Absolutely. Please do, because the vibes that I got off this record through Storm and Grief, which is available now on Bandcamp, by the way. Make sure you cop that.
Yes.
All right. It's
Actually,
is
I'll
it
throw it
streaming as
in.
well, or are you holding off on streaming for now?
No. The stream is here. You know what? I'm going to pull
Okay.
it up right now, actually, so people can just in case anybody's in the chat and wants to peep.
Word.
The pre-sale is up right now. The whole record is dropping on the 23rd this month,
There you go.
and yeah, it's just on Bandcamp. There's an extra track. I released a couple of singles so far, and I put an extra track up for the Bandcamp pre-sale, and then whoever ordered the pre-sale, you're going to get the album about a week early next week.
There you
and
go.
It comes out on all streaming platforms everywhere on the 23rd. So
excellent.
Yeah, Monday the 23rd. It'll be everywhere through and worldwide as well. So
sweet.
Yeah, man.
Man, I really want to thank you for spending time with us today in the Lounge Space, Dog. I really wanted to get you in. I wanted to get you in before, just so that we could talk about actually something you've done previously as well, and just the proliferation of DJ edits now and how they're being consumed and what have you.
Sure.
But then this came up, and I was like, nah, we're going to talk about this record.
I appreciate it, man. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the support. You know, it's interesting, Jay. I gotta say it, man, because it's kind of an undeniable aspect of where we're at right now as far as music goes and the music industry and how it functions.
Yeah.
And how, you know, music gets spread and how it gets consumed and you know, appreciated or thrown to the side or whatever the case may be. But
yeah,
you know, the fact of the matter is, at least as far as I'm concerned, is now, you know, your tight knit communities that actually give a shit about all of this kinds of stuff that we still give a shit about. They're more important than ever. You know what I mean? And so sharing the music, making it meaningful, you know, not just the interaction in terms of how you share it, but making the music meaningful itself, making it, you know, or at least, you know, doing your best to make it interesting and timeless and not just something that you know is going to be a one listen and then you toss kind of thing. You know, it's never been more important. It's a really weird industry that we take part in nowadays. And there's so much competition, man. And like, I remember, I think it was kind of like at the height of COVID. I remember there was this article that came out that talked about the sheer amount of content being released online nowadays.
Oh, it's crazy.
And how absolutely overwhelming and at the same time kind of unsustainable. For the kind of, you know, the way that human beings, you know, they take in art, like it just doesn't make any sense, and the numbers just bonkers, because you're talking about, I don't even remember what it was, man. It was something like 100,000 songs a week, like that. Like, you know, it was probably more than that, and it's probably more now, you know, but it was just a really, really overwhelming number to think about. And so my point is now fucking with the people that really fuck with you, staying connected, you know, with like-minded, community-oriented kind of approaches, man, to this music thing. It's never been more important. It's never been more important, man. So with all that being said, I really appreciate your support for reaching out, and for the kind words, man. You know what I mean? Like, it means a lot to anybody that's still out here trying to, you know, just keep some things moving and keep it interesting and keep it alive, man. You know, the support means everything, bro. So thank you.
No, you know, and it's really easy to support someone who has a DJ background, who's exploring other sounds other than what you might be accustomed to hearing him play or hearing them play.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what makes this record so exciting, is because you're going into other ciphers, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Familiar ciphers still, but
yeah, I think no, and I appreciate it, man. It means a lot to hear that from, you know, your peers in the industry, because there's there's a lot of dude like. Look, you can and I support anybody and everybody that is still here and still around
Yeah,
and
definitely.
still doing their best to stay busy and
Definitely.
stay relevant with what it is that they're trying to do,
Yeah.
musically and DJ wise. I support it all, dude, because
Yeah.
I know how tough this game is, and I
Yes.
understand when cats got to pivot and do some different shit. But I
Yep.
think there is room for a wider gamut, if you catch my drift. Like, it
Totally.
doesn't all have to be, dance music. It doesn't all have to be,
Exactly.
it doesn't all have to be whatever, whatever it is, dude. I think there is room and there's space
Hell
to,
yeah.
to have a wide array of this sound bed, that we call, not only hip hop music, but just like DJ oriented music. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, there's a lot of aspects of all of this stuff that really just comes from being inspired by DJing.
Yep.
For me, making this kind of music and still leaning heavily on sample based music has everything to
Yeah.
do with me just being a crate digger. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody
Exactly.
that is still looking for shit, still in the trenches, still trying to find interesting and unique things to make other, doper shit out of. So,
Man, and if that doesn't make you fuck with Platurn, I can't help you. Okay, that's
oh man,
honestly, for real. I want to salute you again, man. The record is crazy dope. You heard the man, 23rd. Cop that. Honestly, cop it. It's very dope. I'm not talking out my ass here. It's really a dope record.
I really
Make sure you
appreciate
get
that.
that.
Yeah,
And
I
we'll
appreciate that.
definitely get you back in the lounge space again to talk about what happens after.
Absolutely, for sure, man. I'm down to join anytime. I
Sweet.
appreciate you having me. Hey, Ren, I'm not sure if you're gonna see this right now. If you're still on here, you said the link was blocked, but it's just on the Bandcamp, homie. Like, there, it shouldn't
Okay.
be
Yeah,
an issue.
you
But
can find it easy. You can find
yeah,
it easy.
do you know Ren? Ren from True School? You know Ren?
Not,
No.
I'm familiar with the name, but we don't know each other. Know each other.
Okay. Anyway, you guys are these we're all everybody from the Bay up to Winnipeg, the whole nine, dude. We're all, it's no
You
more than
know.
probably like 3 degrees of separation, dude.
You
That's
know.
so.
All right, man. Thanks again.
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right.
Thank you for having me, bro. You have a good rest
Yo,
of your
it's a
evening.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Respect
for sure.
all day, brethren.
Okay, thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Peace.
All right.